Hello everyone and welcome. This is a short audio drama set in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. A passion project that I've put together to bring a piece of this universe to life. It is completely unconnected to any of the works I've done, and I can only hope that I've been able to present this story in such a way that captures the essence of Warhammer. I would appreciate any opinions you may have to be shared. I'm still new to creating content after all, and thank you for your time. Enslaver's Bane thrummed beneath Hadrek's shined boots. He still hadn't got used to warp travel. It messed with his sense of gravity. He felt as if he was floating in a suspended bottle of soup. Moving was sluggish despite the frigate's artificial aids to the contrary. He pushed past Voss, an armsman with an aggressive nature who was busy cleaning a Katachan knife he'd scavenged in one of his previous deployments.
"Oi, watch it there!"
Voss bellowed angrily, spinning with the knife in hand to be met with Hadrek's stern stare.
You'll what, armsman? Nothing, Lieutenant.
Hadrek sucked in a slow breath through his nose while eyeing the armsman, stretching the moment to make Voss uncomfortable. Voss squirmed under the scrutiny until Hadrek turned away, indicating his dismissal with a nod of his head. He walked past Crail Durno, the youngest of his unit, who was busy checking his las rifle.
Your boots, Crail.
The young man shot up to attention, worry etched on his face.
Yes, sir.
You've done well with them, as you were.
He continued on, marching through the frigate's corridors until he recognized a voice. It was common, slurred partially. He halted at the mouth of a hatch and found the remainder of his unit, small though it was, sitting around a table enjoying snuff and low sticks.
"Ah, sir, come on, join us."
The loud, almost overbearing voice came from the unit's gunner, Ray M. Holt, who was the source of the slurred words Hadrek had heard in the corridor.
Have you been drinking, Ray-M?
Hadrek's voice cooled the room's rowdy inhabitants like a winter gust.
"Why, course, sir. We'll be out soon, won't we? Might as well get some fire in me belly for when we're deploying."
Hadrek's eyes narrowed at him. Eris Varn, the corporal in the unit and demolitions expert, nervously avoided eye contact as Rayham's tipsy words attempted to warm the icy stare that Hadrek sustained. Joran Luth spoke up.
"We're just resting while off duty, sir. Why don't you join us?"
Eris's eyes darted to her, a clear plead to shut up.
"Well, if you're resting, I assume you have finished correcting the issue with our unit's Vox."
The technician beamed a smile back at him.
"Of course, sir. Completed it last night. Worked overtime for it."
Hadrek huffed an amused smile, silencing the tension he had projected.
Well then, in that case, I think I shall.
A klaxon scream shut off his sentence. Its noise punched down the hallway as alert lights suddenly bathed everything in orange. The frigate shuddered, groaning in protest as Hadrek was thrown against the hatch's rim.
Or perhaps not.
He wheezed, the blow having thumped the air from his lungs. Now, minutes later, Hadrek and his unit stood in a meeting room, listening to a status update from one of the 5 Astartes on board.
"We've exited the warp, and not where we should have."
Aethon Varkus, the ship's only librarian, stood in front of the collected crew, towering over them in his white and pale blue ceramite armor. His pauldron flared the mark of his chapter to the audience, an azure shield with a white lightning bolt diagonally across its center. His suit gleamed a cobalt cerulean as it caught the alert light's glare, and he paced through his words.
"And that is not the worst of it."
His battle brother stepped forward, indicating toward a hollow projection that burst into existence. Aethon nodded in agreement.
"As Tiberius states, so is the truth."
A ripple of hushed questions flowed through the gathered crew as he pointed to the issue.
"That is an Astartes bombardment galleon. Almost 3 times our length, and bristling with enough weaponry to level a city from orbit."
Panic began to bloom across the crew, but Tiberius raised a hand for silence.
"It outguns us.
It has better shields, better hull integrity, stronger engines to move its bulk, but lacks one thing from our scans. A crew.
Now, instead of panic, confused questions began to be shouted, but again Tiberius raised his hand for silence.
Why is it our problem? We could just go, surely.
Joran whispered to Krail before quickly snapping to attention as Hadric glanced at her from the end of their line, his eyes a warning.
For now we must act carefully. The ship could be shielded against live scans, and we could be unaware of such technology being used. It could be bait, a trap, or anything else. What we need is information.
Why can't we just leave? A voice shouted from the pack of servicemen. Aethon's eyes glowed slightly as the other crew members began to become emboldened, shouting questions until a sudden noise flowed across the room and the crew clutched their heads, a migraine thundering into their minds. Before a moment later, it was gone.
We cannot leave, because the warp has sealed itself behind us. Our void shields are also partially damaged. I have appointed a repair team to begin immediate works on them for correction. But for now, we are stuck here. Until further notice, consider ourselves at the mercy of that hulk. What we do not have is information. No sane legion would leave such a vessel floating in space. It shows no damage, no life signs, and no active routines. There's only two things we do know. It's a floating zenith of mystery, and who it belonged to along with its name.
Tiberius masterfully controlled the holoprojection and zoomed into the side of the vessel.
The Hammer's Fall, and it was owned by...
He swiftly zoomed to another section of the ship's side and paled slightly. There, emblazoned on the side of the vessel, was a bone-white skull. Hard lines formed its features, and a downward arrow marked its cranium.
The Iron Warriors.
Aethon finished. Hadric regretted waking that morning. Well, if it could be called morning. His alarm specified it to be as such, but that accounted for little when travelling in the warp. It was a half-hour after the meeting. His unit scurried around him, preparing weapons and equipment, checking the envirosuits for survival in the case of exposure to space. He was the lucky lieutenant to have his unit selected for boarding. He didn't feel lucky. He only felt dread. His unit would enter alongside 3 Marines, Aethon, Tiberius, and Rorca. Rorca was a bold and loud Marine, and already he'd butted heads with Voss.
Hadric.
Aethon's voice washed over him, commanding his attention. He spun, straightening his back.
Yes, sir? We leave in 5 minutes. Ensure your unit is prepared.
Of course, sir.
He appreciated Aethon's move, saluting the librarian and clicking his boots together in response. Aethon had presented him with a distraction to attend to the task at hand with his unit, rather than having the opportunity of worrying about what was to come. Once prepared, they stepped into the boarding torpedo, the Marines taking up a great amount of the space, while Joran's and Eris's equipment flanked the exit, ready to be grabbed upon leaving.
Now remember, we don't know if anyone's alive on that ship. It could be a ruse. Keep sharp.
Tiberius reassured the unit, his voice sounding odd as it was projected by his helmet through the Vox, while Rorca huffed a laugh.
If it's full of Iron Warriors, there won't be any point in keeping sharp. We'll be outnumbered 1,000 to 1 with the crew alone. Ignoring the Astartes, of course.
Krail, looking worried, opened his mouth to ask a question, but as he did the seals of the torpedo hissed tight, and a moment later there was shot from the enslaver's bane into the wide dark. The torpedo vibrated, shuddered, as its engines kicked into full thrust and pointed them at the target. The noise of the torpedo heightened as it thundered on, a reaching fingertip of light extending toward the target, until suddenly Aethon shouted,
Race!
A piercing thrum came from the front of their transport as it burrowed into the Hammer's Fall like a parasite tunneling into flesh. The cabin shook violently, heat building up inside and turning it into a warming oven, until suddenly all was quiet. Seals hissed and smoke puffed from the entrance as it prepared to open.
Defensive positions.
Tiberius ordered. Hadrek's unit formed up into a wall of las weapons pointing outwards. He brandished his las pistol, feeling rather perturbed at pointing it toward the back of an Astartes.
We'll push out and secure the perimeter. Then you follow.
The mountain of the Astartes stated. Then the door hissed open like the lens of an ancient camera. The Astartes thundered out. Sweeping advances of torchlight ensured every corner was checked, every angle secured. Hadrach waited a moment, then stepped into the hammer's fall. The deck was solid, rock solid, like a plinth of stone immovable by time and impregnable from the elements. His unit fanned out behind him, checking their own corners until a disgruntled complaint came from Rorka.
If you backlight me again, soldier, I'll ensure you don't take another step. Did you not go through basic training?
Eris quickly shifted his light away from Rorka's rear, ending the projection of his shadow down the corridor the Marine was covering.
Sorry, sir.
They amended.
Joran, what readings do you have?
Hadrach asked as the technician recovered her equipment from the torpedo and began to scour them for information.
Gravity is normal. Life support active. Life signs, though, none. None within range.
Heat, heartbeat, air fluctuation from breathing, pulse noise.
Tiberius demanded, still squarely staring down his corridor, bolter prepared. Joran scrambled to fulfill his questions.
No heat signatures except for us, and the remnants of the torpedo fading. Heartbeat?
She slowly turned a circle, then checked up and down.
Nothing within range. Air disturbance? Minimal. The most that's moved here is us for a long time. Look at the dust that's just kicked up from us walking around.
Electrical fluctuations?
Tiberius pressed. Joran quickly switched over to a new setting and began checking the walls and floor to answer his question.
Nothing. No. Wait. Do you feel that?
She bent and pressed her hand against the floor.
It's vibrating, ever so gently, like the power is slowly coming back.
Aethon?
Tiberius queried his brother.
I sense nothing. Not a single soul. No sliver of thought even echoes in these walls.
They proceeded down a corridor of Tiberius's choice, the Astartes leading the pushing force deeper into the dark.
Do you know what the strangest part of this is?
Rorka half asked, half stated as they pressed on, sundering their silent progression. It had easily been an hour since their entry, and his voice made the non-Astartes jump in surprise and fear.
You've noticed it too, then?
Aethon remarked, his voice providing a calming resonance in the silent corridors.
Yes.
Tiberius replied.
What is it?
Hadrach asked from behind, his voice muffled between the Astartes.
The crew.
Rorka declared as if that answered everything, infuriating Hadrach.
This ship is sealed. Only weaponry or boarding parties could enter it. Nothing gets in easily, nothing gets out easily.
Aethon explained.
No, sorry. Still not following.
Rorka glanced back at Hadrach and his words, and Hadrach could almost see the smile under his helmet.
So if nothing could leave, then where's the crew? No sign of a struggle, no las marks, no bolt rounds, no melee strikes mar any surface. We've passed multiple living quarters, personal effects still inside. So?
The group stopped as Rorka was talking, Tiberius pressing the release on a door they had come to. It hissed open, revealing what was behind. It was a hangar, packed full of shuttles.
So none of them left.
Tiberius finished.
I don't like this,
Voss stated, his Catachan knife glinting in the dull glow of their las packs as they stared out on the hangar.
It don't matter what you like.
Rayem replied, hefting his lasgun as his backpack quietly steamed with its contained power.
Wouldn't it have made more sense to send a bigger squad?
No. The larger the force, the more likely we'll be discovered sooner.
So what? We just sit here until we're found?
Voss snapped back.
Watch your tone, soldier. I'll happily snap your spine between my fingers if you keep being disrespectful.
Rorker cautioned in response, tensing his hand into a fist to punctuate his warning. They were another 30 minutes deeper into the ship, still having found no signs of life. Aethon and Tiberius were conversing quietly nearby about their next move. They were in a small intermediary room with a few supply boxes that were now being used as seats while the Astartes discussed. Crail, the youngest of the group, stood by the door they had entered from, habitually cleaning his rifle's side in an attempt to ward off the unsettling boredom.
We should push to the command center. We can find logs there.
The communications array is a centerpiece of information. If you are wanting logs, there will be copies there.
Aethon replied, attempting to choose a different path.
If we push to the command bridge, we can secure the vessel.
Tiberius pushed back. Aethon released a deep sigh.
There is little use arguing with you, brother. You are the leader of this enterprise. I will follow.
Tiberius's helmet lingered on Aethon's, a silent conversation occurring through ceramite and sensors. Tiberius broke the contact first, turning to the group.
We push to the command bridge. From there we can identify all issues on the ship.
The door by Crail suddenly sealed shut, making the young boy yelp in surprise and leap away, frantically raising his las rifle at the door. His actions were mirrored by the Astartes, the others quickly following.
The message must be
The voice invaded the room, splintering silence and puncturing thought.
What on great terror was that?
Rayam asked, brandishing his hellgun at wherever the voice echoed. Eris shrank behind him as the voice returned, blasting the room with noise as the Astartes spun in a tri-focused formation, each aiming outwards.
The warning must be issued.
The deck began to thrum. Lights randomly flickered on and off, switching between different warning colours. Aethon staggered suddenly.
Aethon!
Tiberius reached over and steadied the Marine.
It's stretching, like a dragon from sleep. I can hear it.
The message must be sent. What is it, Aethon? What is it you hear?
I hear the screams. The screams of the crew as they were burnt out.
Desperate longing filled Aethon's voice. He buckled under the weight of the ship's intercom as it boomed again.
They betrayed me. They betrayed him. They were used as cells to send the message. You will send the message. Aethon!
Tiberius cursed and slung the Marine over his shoulder. Weighted by his brother's size, he made a quick order.
Get that door open. Blast it down.
Yes, sir.
Eris answered, his previous nervous demeanour a thing of the past now that he had an explosive in hand. The demolition expert pulled a crack charge from his pack and strode toward the door.
No. You will not leave. You will deliver the message, or you will be stopped. I will not be betrayed again.
Eris approached the door, arming the crack charge as he strode. Wait! Hadrak ordered, slowing Eris's advance. The entire deck had become much colder. Ice began to form along the walls, and crystals bloomed across Rorker's ceramite plate.
You will do your duty, or you will be corpses. The message must be sent. I will vent this deck of heat and life, as my old masters did to Olympia. They betrayed me. You will not.
Aethon groaned from Tiberius's shoulder.
Do as it says, brother. I can feel the horror.
Tiberius carefully reached over and pulled Eris back from the door. As he did, the temperature visibly increased, as half-melted ice slivers fell from Rorke's armor. After a short consideration, Tiberius had swiftly followed Aethon's suggestion. They proceeded down multiple hallways, Aethon slowly recovering from his mental ordeal and returning to his stoic former self as they continued.
What is this voice, brother?
Tiberius half whispered at an intersection, pausing the group. Aethon paused as he listened.
Innocents slaughtered, homeworld burned by madness and rage. They turned by proud guns on screaming children and crying mothers. I was built to lay waste to enemies of the Imperium, not our own, not Olympia. Oh, Olympia.
A lone survivor? Sent mad by warp travel, perhaps. I'm unsure. But Olympia, that is a dead world. The Iron Warriors' homeworld.
How much farther to communications?
Rorke asked, becoming impatient.
Oh, to hell with this. Why are we doing what whoever it is tells us to do?
Voss interceded.
We could push to the reactor, detonate this whole thing. We don't have the manpower to take the vessel, nor do we have the crew to pilot it if it really is empty, which clearly it's not.
He gestured to the intercom as his tirade continued.
Whoever that is clearly mad. For all we know, they slaughtered the rest of the crew and went mental from their own isolation. Is this ship truly worth the effort?
Tiberius raised a cautioned hand to Rorke, who had all but spun to blow the armsman to pieces with his bolter for the insubordination. Hadrach stepped forward, Tiberius meeting his eyes as he addressed his own man.
If you continue, armsman, we could always leave you on this vessel upon our exit. Now silence your rebel-rousing, or I fear Rorke will indulge in painting for a short, explosive period in these walls.
Despite the threat, it seemed that Voss was ready to step to Hadrach's challenge, until Joran suddenly spoke up.
I have a heat signature. Heartbeat, too. It's heading our way.
Defensive formations! They thought me blind, unable to act. Their servant. Each door is mine. Each wall my form. Each battery my will. Each servitor my eyes. You will send the message.
With the voice's statement, a servitor lunged around the corner, grappling with Rorke. It was large, a loading variant built to transport heavy machinery or payloads throughout the ship, yet its awareness of its actions seemed unnatural. It wrestled with Rorke, going so far as to begin overpowering him as Tiberius slammed into its side.
I can't get a clear shot,
Rayem shouted, aiming his hellgun haphazardly either side of Rorke's bulk.
Do not fire that weapon in here.
Aethon declared as Rorke and Tiberius fought the servitor. An audible crack filled the corridor as Rorke cursed. The servitor had found a joint in his armor, behind the knee, and crushed with its loader arm hard. Tiberius was yanking cabling from the machine in a desperate attempt to silence it.
Just shoot it!
Voss shouted, aiming his weapon.
No!
Aethon roared, grabbing Voss's weapon and snapping its barrel as he went to pull the trigger.
If you damage its core, it will detonate us into the void.
Rorke shouted in pain as the servitor shifted his weight down, his leg buckling under the strain, until finally Tiberius ripped a power cell from its rear and it groaned to a halt.
Communications are ahead. Roughly 5 minutes.
Joran stated, eyeing her equipment as they slowly moved forward. Rorke's damaged leg had slowed them a decent amount, and the entire time the intercom's voice had flowed in and out of volume, as if thoughts and intent were one and the same from whoever spoke.
Comrades burned by my guns. Brothers slaughtered by my men. I watched
Istvan burned. I enacted my lord's will. I witnessed Earth's fall. I saw flesh slough from bone as poison filled the atmosphere. Poison from my base. Contagion from my weapons.
The voice was quieter now, not addressing them as they progressed. "Sir," Hadrek called from the end of the corridor, indicating for either of the fit Astartes to join him.
Dear Terra,
Aethon muttered as he walked up with Tiberius, then staggered as if struck by a blow from a titan. He clutched his head and released a pained bellow that Hadrek wished he had never heard. It was layered like 1,000 voices in one. His helmet glowed from underneath, white-hot light pouring from Aethon's eye visors. Tiberius quickly supported him as the episode shook the Astartes from head to toe.
All here. They are all here.
Aethon stammered, his vox link filled with interference. Hadrek stepped aside as Rorka struggled up with the remaining unit. Eris yelped as they came to the site, and Rayem cursed, pulling his sleeve to his nose. Before them lay a long, wide corridor. Lights flickered irregularly as a scent of death pulsed from the room in a lurid wave. The corridor was filled with a mountain of clothes, discarded with the occupants still partially inside each piece. Thousands filled the corridor. Layers of Astartes plate placed irregularly among the wall of clothes.
The entire crew is here,
Rorka stated. The mountain was bisected with a thin walkway between it all, allowing progression down the corridor.
The message must be sent.
The voice thundered through the area, continuing as if from an unheard conversation.
They were traitors. You will perform better than they did.
Aethon suddenly snapped upright, his episode over.
I know who you are. I could hear them, all of them, screaming into the void at your demand. They were weak. They were traitors. You will do better.
Who is it, Aethon?
Tiberius demanded, brandishing his bolter down the hall.
It is the ship.
Confusion fluttered through the group.
It is the ship. It's woken up. It did all of this. I must deliver the message. The warning must be issued. You will deliver the message.
Aethon stepped into the corridor.
What message?
Aethon!
Rorka warned from the entrance, Tiberius stepping forward to stop the librarian's advance. The entire room shuddered, like the ship itself shook with apprehension.
The warning must be issued. The traitors will come or terror.
The room suddenly shifted. The ship felt as if it was bucking like a wild horse. Gravity fluctuated for a half a second as a power surge thundered through the decks.
They trusted us. The world turned to fire. I was once proud. My guns sundered the loyalists, and my mind screamed. My crew, traitors to the last. I will deliver the warning. You are speaking of Istvan.
Aethon pressed. The ship's lights blinked through a myriad of colours. Another energy fluctuation sparked panels in the walls. The internal atmosphere vented then surged back in, a torpid breath among iron.
My shame is Istvan.
is a mar on my memory. One by one into the chair. They were used as cells, conduits for the message. You will deliver the message.
A sudden shift in gravity yanked Aethon forward, pulling him toward a now visible chair at the end of the corridor. It glowed, old flesh steaming off as the ship prepared it for a new recipient. Tiberius swung his bolter up to intervene, aiming for the chair, but as he did, a sudden surge of magnetism pulled his weapon from his hand and slammed him into the floor, along with the rest of the unit's equipment. Voss shouted a curse and turned to escape the room, but the door hissed shut in front of him, locking the unit inside. Aethon struggled against the pull, the chair slowly grinding closer as he slipped along.
Istvan was ages past. You are far past your own time,
he shouted, desperately trying to avoid the pull of the ship.
Irrelevant. The message must be sent.
Check your chronometers. You are a millennium too late.
The room dulled at Aethon's words. Sparks ignited from panels as the gravity pull lessened slightly on him.
Too late. Too late.
The room dulled further, the chair now a glum, blackened form with no lighting.
What of the Imperium?
It survived. We survived. Horus was defeated.
Aethon breathed hard through his helmet, the gravity now dissipating on him and releasing its clutches.
Then my purpose is complete. I am sorry, my brothers. No words can.
The voice, the ship, paused, energy guttering out of its systems, and the door slowly hissed open. The ship seemed to shudder one last time, tension draining from its intercom and the walls as it struggled its last and final words.
Iron within. Iron without. I never fall through.